Hi, I'm Joe Polizzi, and this is the Content Inc. podcast. 5 minutes every Monday for content creators who desire to be content entrepreneurs. Hi everyone, I'm very excited to release our first Content Inc. book tour interview. This means for the next 11 weeks, I'll be dropping a special Content Inc. podcast episode on Thursday mornings. Now, the book tour ran all through the month of May, mostly on the social audio app Clubhouse, with our kickoff interview being Michael Stelzner, founder of Social Media Examiner, also a very large case study in the Content Inc. book. Now, I asked Michael to be the first interview simply because Mike and I were on this road to building our Content Inc. models at the very same time. We actually met at a conference called Online Marketing Summit in 2008. He interviewed me about my book, Get Content, Get Customers. That was my first book, and then filled me in on his new blogging project, which ultimately became Social Media Examiner. So here's the interview, lightly edited, and then I'll close it out at the end. Now, most of this is Mike and I chatting, but then Ann Ginn, editor of The Tilt, leads up the Q&A with many awesome people asking questions. So here you go, and enjoy. I've known Michael Stelzner since I think it was like 2008, just about the time when he launched Social Media Examiner, and then the amazing social media marketing world, author, podcaster, entrepreneur, and 8 other things, and he can tell you about it. Amazing case study of what a content entrepreneur can do. So first, Mike, welcome to the room. And second, what I'd love you to do is just start off and give everyone sort of the 3-minute origin story about how you got to this point.
Thank you, Joe, for having me, and hello to everyone here today. I'm excited, first of all, that I'm here, and hopefully some of you who are listening now live or maybe listening to the recording will get inspired by the things that we talk about today. So the question, Joe, was how did I start Social Media Examiner? Was that the question? I'm going to assume that's what it was.
That is correct. No, I want, sort of how you got involved in it. Why did you do it? And then, give us the 3-minute of how you got to this point.
All right. So I started out as a writer, and I was helping businesses, B2B businesses, create marketing materials. I was working in the tech industry. I was working with some pretty well-known brands, Microsoft, Hewlett-Packard, Dow Jones, Motorola, Qualcomm, and really became a specialist, if you will, in creating a certain kind of writing known as white papers. Nowadays, ebooks are a little bit more popular, but I would say that the white paper was like the grandfather, if you will, or the father of the ebook. And most of those businesses were using those to generate leads, to disintermediate traditional media, because prior to this, they had to go to magazines and buy spreads or buy articles. And this was our opportunity to create really rich, valuable content that educated and persuaded prospects. So that was where I cut my teeth in the world of writing, built up an email newsletter to a point where it was about 20,000 email subscribers with my white paper business. And this is back when email was like really, really popular. So inside of that newsletter would be rich articles, which we're now starting to see resurface today with publications like The Hustle. And inside of there, I started interviewing people, and I started talking about topics that were promotional in nature, like marketing related topics that these businesses could use. Started writing about social media back then because it was kind of emerging as a hot trend with Twitter and Facebook and also LinkedIn. And eventually I decided that as an experiment, I was going to go secure the domain socialmediaexaminer.com. I was very concerned that the San Francisco Examiner was going to sue me for the word examiner, so I trademarked it. And my premise was really simple. I was just going to write rich, detailed articles for free that everyone else was hiding the insight. Back then everybody was, consultants, if you will, and they were charging a lot of money for secret knowledge. And I decided to give all that knowledge away for free. In the first 90 days of publication, we grew that list to 10,000 emails organically. And hundreds of thousands of people began to read the publication. Fast forward to today, 2 million people a month come to Social Media Examiner. Plus, we've got about 450,000 people that get our email in their inbox 3 days a week. And we now publish 2 2 different podcasts, multiple articles a week, multiple YouTube videos a week. And I think we are the biggest media company for this topic, which is, as a matter of fact, I know we are. We're the largest in the world for marketing related to social media. We have the largest pure play marketing podcast in the world. There are 2 podcasts that are larger, but they don't exclusively focus on marketing. And I'm very excited what we built. We built something really, really fascinating, all on the back of a premise that if you provide valuable insight, that people will want more, and they will be willing to exchange that insight for an email address. And with those email addresses, you can build a multi-million-dollar business.
Michael, congratulations. I love the story. So there's a lot of content creators here, and you know what, I interviewed you for the book, and we talked a lot about choosing a platform and choosing an audience and figuring that out. I want to start with the audience because I think it's the most important point. What did you see in the audience specifically? Like, why did you think that you had an advantage to go after that particular audience? And I want to couch it in the point that a lot of people go too broad with their audience. Mm-hmm. Why did you think that the audience of social media marketers was right? What did you do that made it work?
Well, first of all, there was no such thing as a social media marketer back then, because social media was new. So what I had learned was that I could develop an audience of marketers with a very narrow topic of white papers. And then I eventually learned I could draw an audience of writers who wanted to be journalists, out-of-work journalists who wanted to be professional writers for business, right? So I began to realize that there's a lot of money in the niche. And I looked around and I noticed that there was a lot of bloggers back in 2009 when I started Social Media Examiner. But most of what they were writing about was rants. They were mostly complaining about what's wrong with social media. By the way, we know that that's still going on today, but mostly being done in podcasting form.
It hasn't changed at all. You're right. It hasn't changed.
But what they weren't doing is they were not actually sharing insights and wisdom. They were not sharing tips and techniques. They were not educating people. And that was my unique differentiator, because I knew how to educate people. And I knew that if I could actually provide insightful things, like back in the day, it might be how to use Twitter to grow an email list, or it might be, I was even covering blogging, right? How to attract more people to your blog posts. Back then I was covering blogging, I was covering, Twitter, and I was covering Facebook predominantly, right? So it might be like how to set up a Facebook page, how to use it to grow your business, and then eventually how to do with Instagram, and then TikTok and all these other things. So I just realized nobody was doing it, and I was trying to do it with excellence. Those that were doing it were publishing very short articles. Back then a blog post was 200 words. My goal was to be 1,000 words. And now multiple thousands of words. So what's happened over the years is a lot of people that are software companies that are dominating search right now, like Buffer and many others. A lot of those guys started out guest writing for Social Media Examiner back in the day and learning the value proposition of creating really rich, valuable content, and then ultimately using that to generate leads. So that I knew that I had a secret advantage, which was my ability to write educational content. And it was going to be a 3-year experiment, Joe. I wasn't sure it was going to last, to be very honest with you. I figured I'd give it 3 years, it'll peak, and it will die. Little did I know. It would still be going strong today.
It's funny. You interviewed me, I think it was Online Marketing Summit in 2008, and maybe you already launched it, but you were in the process of launching it. And what's interesting is your core platform is the website, is blogging. Blogging and email, that hasn't changed at all. I mean, so you've been it's 12 years later, and you're still basically have the same platform model. Is that the specific strategy? Is that just what's worked? I mean, give me an idea what.
Actually, it's come full circle. So in the beginning, it was just email. And I got to the point where I grew the list to 650,000 email subscribers, and then email got more sophisticated, and I realized I've got to cleanse the list, and I pared the list back to about 300,000. Then I began techniques to keep the lens clean, the list clean, by anybody who didn't open within a certain period of time was automatically removed from the list. But now, today, while we're recording this, we are in an era now where all of a sudden privacy is a big deal. And there was no remarketing back when I started Social Media Examiner, and we're moving away from remarketing again. So now all of a sudden we're at an age where we've got to go back to the fundamentals of content marketing, right? Which is to own our audience, not to build on someone else's platform. So along the way, we did build very big audiences on Facebook and Twitter and all these other channels. And we're doing it right now on YouTube. And I still think that that's very smart. We have about 130,000 subscribers there and about 400,000 video views per month. And we're definitely investing heavily in that platform. But we have gone full circle, and now we are absolutely on a trajectory to double down on email and double down on strategic generation of content. And it's kind of fascinating how when things change, you go back to the fundamentals.
It's interesting. You sort of keep reinventing yourself, but you're still doing the same thing and focused on this own media proposition. My question is, and I want to talk to you about revenue in a little bit, but I think it's really important to talk about, if you had to start today, would you be doing the same things? Like, would you make the same decisions? Like, if you had to start fresh, you felt you had the audience focused on, what would you do with your platform? Would you do anything different than you are right now?
Well, the things that I added along the way that are new that I couldn't have thought of back then were podcasting and YouTube. So if I was starting again today, I probably would start with one of those two channels, because along the years, the written platforms, that have been around for a while, like Social Media Examiner, have a huge advantage with Google that is very hard to unseat. This is why a lot of media entities are buying even defunct blogs, because they want that Google juice. It's harder to rank inside of Google, and we're in an age right now where Google is serving up answers instead of links to websites. So if I was starting all over today, I would start with probably podcasting first, because I found that in my particular case, I absolutely love doing podcasting. I've got 3 different shows that I produce every week. They're not all podcasts, but they're all variations. Like I do a 90-minute show on Clubhouse, a 20-minute live show that's also a podcast, and then my 45-minute podcast. It's a very intimate medium. I think it's powerful. So I would definitely start with my voice. And then, YouTube has turned out to be a very powerful medium as well. But the problem with YouTube is it's very expensive to produce the videos at the quality and caliber that we present them at. So I would pick, either audio or video if it was today, because the world seems to be reading a lot less. Nonetheless, if I am a writer and that is my gift, then I would absolutely blog. I would just have to figure out ways. It's a little harder today, to get recognized. So I would probably guest author on other bigger blogs if that is an option. That's becoming less and less of an option these days, but I might start there. I mean, frankly, in the early days, I was guest blogging for Brian Clark on Copyblogger, and also for Ann Hanley at Marketing Profs. And I also had my own blog too, but sometimes being on someone else's platform in the very beginning can be a nice catalyst to growth.
Even when you've been around for a while, it can be a good thing. Absolutely. But I'm going to do a quick room reset. Hey, everybody. We got a lot of new people in the room, so I just want to make sure you know what's going on. You're part of the Content Inc. book tour, and our guest is Mike Stelzner from Social Media Examiner, talking about what it takes to build and monetize an audience online. And if you would, you're new people in the room, please press the button in the lower right-hand corner and invite 2 or 3 people in to hear how Mike built his content empire. Mike, okay, I love your focus on email. Of course, you're going back to that now. But take me through a couple key insights when you knew you had something. You said you were going to give it 3 years. What are those aha moments that you said, I think we've actually got something here?
Well, first of all, this is back when you could see social share counts and stuff like that, which has changed. I just started to notice that the number of people that were sharing the articles was completely crazy. Back in the day, there was this thing called Dig, and we would rank on top of that. There was all these other platforms that aren't around anymore. Our content was just constantly being profiled everywhere. There was this thing called Technorati, which would rank the top blogs. We ranked as one of the top marketing blogs in the world very early in our existence. I don't know how in the world they calculated it, but and just the pure amount of traffic that we were bringing to our website just absolutely blew away all of my expectations. And the comments, in the early days, this is how most people communicated, is they would leave comments on the blog post, right? So I started to see the rich variety of contents, really meaningful comments, and these were all really, really strong signals, because prior to this, I had an email newsletter, and the only way anybody would interact would be responding to the email newsletter. And I just started to notice the signals were really, really strong, very, very early. In addition, I had a little tab called Write for Us, and the number of applications that were coming in early on for people, really quality people that wanted to write for us, was out of this world. And, I had hit on something, and Joe, you and I talked about this before you started the Content Marketing Institute, the concept of a multi-author blog. There weren't a lot of people doing what I was doing back then. And that also was a big aha moment, the quality and caliber of guests that I was able to get to write for the blog. So all these signals kind of came together in a really, really positive way. But I think perhaps the biggest signal was I did this thing called the Social Media Marketing Industry Report. And every year, and I've done it now for 13 years, I'm about to launch the 13th annual report next Monday, May 10th or 11th. And just the thousands upon thousands of people that took my study, and the tens of thousands of tweets that I would get when this came out, and the press that I would get, was ridiculous. And I just knew that I was onto something. If I could just figure out how I could turn all of it into money, I would be off to the races.
I think that most people underestimate the power of research. I mean, when we launched our content marketing research at CMI, everything changed. And we just did a story on The Tilt about it, and I wish more people would focus on that, so it's not surprising. So let's talk about revenue. There's a lot of content creators out there that generally have, they're a YouTuber, they get YouTube advertising, a podcaster, you've got sponsorship, some have Patreon. But you've really worked to have a fully diversified set of revenue options. What I'd like you to do, Mike, is just take us through sort of your choices on revenue, especially talk about the event and what you decided to do with that, and just talk about
today or back when I started. Which way do you want?
I want to really quickly, like when you started, and then move on to today, and take people through how you drive revenue.
I did about somewhere between $1.4 and $1.7 million in revenue in the very first year of my business, which was really quite good for me. And back then I was doing online events, which are now very common, right? And they were paid summits. And I did 3 of them a year. And that was the primary way that I made money. And I waited till I got to a certain size before I started doing it. I wanted to have at least 20,000 emails on my list. So it was all free in the beginning with no advertising of anything at all. And I made the strategic decision to not actually accept advertising at all in any form whatsoever, full stop. No display ads, no email ads. I decided that we were going to be the exclusive sponsor of the content that we were creating in the beginning. Then over time, as I began to grow the media entity, I added a podcast, and all these other kinds of media, but I still retained all of that owned media as, whatever we did was our exclusive product. So fast forward to now, or the last few years, we've had a variety of different products. We've continued to do summits, and we're doing one literally in a few weeks called the Social Video Summit. We also did a conference. Joe knows the story, but I got inspired by Joe's Content Marketing World, which he sold. I started Social Media Marketing World about 1.5 years later, and we grew that to about 5,000 people. We had our last conference March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 2020. And the world shut down a few weeks later. So we were really blessed to be able to be one of the last big marketing conferences in America before the whole world shut down. We were not able to have the conference this year because of COVID. So we diversified a little bit, and we can come back to that in a minute. Another way that we make money is we've had a membership organization for more than 5 years called the Social Media Marketing Society, where we've had thousands of customers who paid us either monthly or annual to belong to this society, and we train them. And we provide long-form educational training every month on techniques related to social media marketing. And we also provide support inside a very active Facebook group. So the main ways that we've been making money over the last few years before COVID was the conference was the main way. That's where we made the bulk of our money because there was just all sorts of revenue opportunities there. Physical tickets, virtual tickets, booth sponsorships, all these kinds of things that you know a lot about, Joe. And then we would do online events. We would have multiple online events, and then we would have our society. And then we also got to the point where we have a sales team, and we do sell ads in our newsletter. So newsletter got really big. Lots of big businesses with a lot of money have come to us over the years and spent many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars to be in our newsletter because all of our content is original and we've got a really, really unique audience for the right kind of sponsor. So when COVID hit, we had to diversify. So we did long form 2-hour live workshops online. And we had, I don't know, about 1,400 people pay as much as $1,000 to come to these really in-depth 2-hour workshops that was like 12 of them covering different topics. And that I wanted to try something no one had ever done before, right? Because everybody else is doing these short form conferences. I wanted to do very small, select, high intensity, in-depth live workshops. So now where we're at is we're working on some new products that are going to be coming out, but we're constantly trying new things, Joe. We're constantly spinning up things, experimenting with them. If they don't work, then we try new things. But man, last year during COVID, we must have launched 9 different products just to kind of survive.
No, but I think what your advantage is you're used to that because you always looked at creating new revenue sources. You were always into diversification. And that's what concerns me about a lot of content entrepreneurs today because they have 1 or 2 maybe sources where you have 5, 6, 7, 10 different sources of revenue.
I'd say probably 5 or 6 primary sources, but a lot of those are the conference itself has a bazillion different possibilities, right? So you have different ticketing types, you have physical and virtual, you have different levels of sponsorships, you got merchandise. Yeah. So, but without the conference, I'd say we're down to about 5 or 6 different kinds of products that we're trying to sell right now.
Well, I don't think people realize how profitable in-person events can be. I remember the first year we did Content Marketing World and people said, "How much money did you lose?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" I mean, so, people just don't get it. I'm going to do a quick reset, folks. I'm Joe Polizzi. Welcome to Mike Stelzner Hour, where we're talking about how Social Media Examiner built a content empire. If you want to invite some friends, just click that plus button. In 5 minutes, we're going to start Q&A because I know we've got a couple of people in the queue already. So get your questions ready, and we're going to start moving forward. So, Mike, I got a couple last questions for you, but the one I really want to talk about, you talk to a lot of content entrepreneurs. You talk to a lot of media executives. What's the worst advice you're hearing out there when given to people that are trying to do what you do?
Be everywhere, I think, is a really big problem.
Thank you.
I think that a lot of people are suffering from squirrel syndrome, right? Where they see a lot of squirrels and they listen to a lot of people and they're putting their faith in too many different people. They're just chasing opportunities that keep presenting themselves instead of really asking themselves, all right, what are my content gifts, right? You either can write or you can speak or you're good on camera, right? And those are really the 3, right? And that can be recorded or live. Once you know what those gift sets are, then you just have to go where that audience is. And it's really that simple. One of the things that I have learned is that people that listen to audio are different than people that read and different than people that watch video. So you just got to start in one place and really, really, really get good at it. No matter how good you think you are, you can go deeper. I thought I knew everything about email marketing, and I'm continuing to learn new things every single day, even though my hands are in the trench and I'm involved with it constantly. The well goes so much deeper than you imagine, and there's so much more opportunity than you could possibly ever possibly imagine. You do not need to be on every social platform. You don't need to be on any social platform. And that's, yes, me, Social Media Examiner, telling you this. You just need to be where it makes sense for your business.
Well, I think that's what we see, and what we found out in the book is that people just diversify too quickly and unnecessarily. You're right. I mean, when we worked with large enterprises, especially the first they had to launch in every platform, the TikTok, the podcast, the blog, and they have to do it all at one time when people like yourselves are just focusing on doing a couple things really well and building an audience over time. So that's kind of what we're seeing. All right, I want to start getting some questions up. We have some people in the queue. Ann, can you bring some folks up and we'll get started asking Mike some questions?
Yeah, I will have to say that I met Mike when I took the white paper course many moons ago. So
wow, that is forever ago.
Yes, I'm that old. I'm a big fan. So I'm curious as we get our questions in there. My question is looking at all the products you talked about developing in the past year. Is there one that the reaction was surprising, or one that you found was the most successful that you're like, I'm not glad for the circumstances, but we're gonna keep around?
To be honest with you, it's been a grind. I'm not going to lie. I think that COVID has forced a lot of people that used to do physical events into the online world, and most of those events are free, and we don't do that. And as a result of that, we're not looking for a lead. We're looking for a relationship. We're looking to deliver a very high quality experience, but it is a race to the bottom with a lot of these online events that are next to nothing or free. And there's also the other side of it where they're super, super expensive and they try to recreate a physical event. I just think it's very, very hard these days to create this kind of content, these live training experiences. So I can't tell you one thing that has absolutely worked beyond our expectations, because it has been a challenge for us. We have generated plenty of revenue, but not at the standards we were before COVID. Even with our online products, it's just changed quite a bit, to be honest with you.
That makes sense. So we will turn to Angela, who raised her hand first. So she'll get to be first up with a question for Mike.
Hi, Mike. Actually, I'm a big fangirl. I've been reading your stuff for a long time. I own a travel agency and I run a program called the Luxury Travel University. I always get these questions of like the small business dilemma in my training and consulting. Not only on the retail side, but for advisors and people in the industry of how does like a small business balance out trying to create content because they don't always have the revenue. I mean, I feel like content creation is like a full-time job. And so you take these small businesses that don't always have the revenue for content creation. They end up being kind of a do-it-yourselfer and they don't get anywhere. They're just grabbing a few fans here or attracting a few people on Instagram. I mean, I'm one of those people because I'm working at my real job, trying to manage like the social media on the side. What's your advice on that?
It's a wonderful question. I think you have to look at content as your marketing engine and not as an expense, but as an investment. So every piece of content that you create, especially if it's driving people to an owned media opportunity, right? Which is podcasts and really email, right, is the ideal scenario because you can nurture that relationship off of the social platforms. The challenge with creating content on Instagram is, the shelf life is a day, right? And the challenge with creating content on Facebook is, the shelf life is less than a day, and so on and so forth, right? So if you can create content that has a longer shelf life, then you can look at it as an investment, right? So for example, that written post could have a shelf life of years. That YouTube video could have a shelf life of years because YouTube actually is a platform that intentionally tries to put good content in front of an audience that wants to watch it. We've had videos on our YouTube channel that started out slow and all of a sudden have been watched by 500,000 people. So the key is to think of every piece of content as an investment. Then it comes down to, I'm a small business. I don't have a lot of time. Who should I have? Who should I hire to make that content? Because the truth of the matter is that if you want your content to be seen on the social platforms, you have to pay the social platforms. You have to turn it into an ad. And in that case, you're paying Big Daddy Facebook, or Big Daddy Google, or Big Daddy whoever, right? Google owns YouTube, right? So the idea there is you turn something into an ad and it's here today and gone tomorrow. But if you take that same amount of money or even a fraction of that amount of money and you go out and you find someone that can create a video and come in studio and film, like literally right now, we've got someone in studio that's been here all day filming with my crew to create Instagram videos that you will see on our channel in the next few months. And they're about 12 to 15 minutes long. And, yes, it costs money to fly this person in. It costs money to have these videos edited, but these videos are going to yield enormous opportunity for us downstream. It's going to give us a reason to show up in someone's inbox because they're going to open the email because there's some rich, valuable content. Now, Joe, I know you can add a million things to this, but I would encourage you, Joe, to add your thoughts to this because I think it's a really important question that Angela's bringing up. Did you hear the question?
I guess what I would say is I can't agree more with what you're saying. I think that when you look at everything, that my biggest concern of what's going on right now, and you talked about paying for Big Daddy Google and Big Daddy whatever, that's my biggest concern right now with what's going on with content entrepreneurs and content creators, because they're creating their houses on rented land and they're losing control. Which, by the way, it's fine if you make the decision to do that. The problem is you have to have a secondary strategy to move content assets away from that at some point, like you did so well, Mike, with email. So that what I'm seeing with YouTubers and Twitch streamers and people on TikTok is that they fall into they're being seduced. So they're being seduced to the dark side, which can be good and can be bad, but in a lot of cases it's bad because at the end of the day they don't have any power, and if those companies decide to shut the spigot off, they're done. So that's my biggest concern with what you said. And if you decide to go off your own platform and go on to something that you don't control, you have to set the strategy, the exit strategy right now, that you move to something like email or something like a membership group. So you have that control, not control, but the permission to communicate with an audience and the control to communicate with them. So
a couple more thoughts, Angela. You treat Instagram and Facebook and all the other platforms as your opportunity to be top of mind. So every time you post a story, your face is up there, right? Or your brand is up there. And that top of mind is powerful, right? Because people remember you and they see you, even if they don't watch your story. Or you use social media as an opportunity to test new ideas or to just engage with the community, right? A community of people who love you and may not, or people who discover you and begin to follow you. Then what you can do is you can begin to try to move that relationship down off of the platform. And the good news is that soon, if they haven't already, there's going to be automation coming to Instagram DMs. So imagine if you could encourage someone who watches your stuff on Instagram to DM you, and then all of a sudden you could give them an offer, automate it, and then begin to get them onto your email list. Same thing with text messaging, right? You can begin to use these text messaging services and say, text me. Gary Vaynerchuk has been doing this extremely successfully. So the idea here is you have to understand that the purpose of social media is really an opportunity, like a playground, to try new ideas, to engage with an audience, to develop loyal people who love you and follow you or for some of the content you come out with, but not necessarily as a platform that you're going to use to directly market if you plan on not spending a lot of money. So that's the key. It's not easy. And these platforms are moving away from sending traffic off the platform. It's just going to get harder and harder. So that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that helps.
Oh, that helps tremendously. Can I just ask you one follow-up with
Sure.
this? Back to your comment on email marketing. I mean, I noticed that I only get maybe like a 30 or 35% opening on that. And from what you said earlier, do you feel like email marketing
only
is dead?
you realize that's unparalleled. Okay. Just so
only is
well,
fantastic.
I feel like that's with two cents. But I mean, I look at that and I'm going, gosh, is that really reaching the key people that I wanted to reach?
Just for the record, you're lucky to get a 1% reach on Facebook. Okay. So 1 to 2.5% is really good on Facebook. So if you're getting a 35% open rate on email and you're getting maybe 1% of your audience engaging with you on the other social platforms, and it's easy, run the metrics. Just look at your analytics on Instagram. Look how many people follow you and look how many people see your posts. You're going to be shocked. It's nowhere near 35%. So yeah, if you're getting a 35% open rate, you're doing something right.
Okay. Thanks so much. Great advice tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Angela, for your great questions. And I saw Evan was applauding, so I will be interested to hear Evan's question for the group.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, guys, I've been looking forward to this room all day, so it's really my honor to be up here. And I loved your throwback reference to white papers. I came up in the enterprise tech world in the 90s, so it was all about the white paper. And I guess my question, Michael, is what's your view of long form content in B2B moving forward? Do you think we're going to go back to longer form, or we're just our attention span is simply too short? What's your perspective on where we're headed?
Well, Evan, I'm here to tell you long form is here to stay. And long form is actually the differentiator. Because if you think about social media, it's almost all short form media. But when you think about, it's a question of what is long form, right? So, funny enough, on Facebook, long form is more than a minute. Okay, on a video, right? On YouTube, long form is more than 10 minutes. Okay, but the written word in particular, I believe long form is here to stay because we've got a lot of email newsletters that are very long, like The Hustle, and many, many others that are doing a great job and absolutely crushing it. They were acquired by HubSpot for like $24 million in the last couple of months. And they're exclusively long form media. Podcasting is a form of long form media. And the most prolific podcaster out there, Joe Rogan, does a 3-hour show. And his show is acquired for like a ridiculous amount of money. So I think right now people want quality. And quality cannot be done easily in short form. So that's good news for you if you're a long form creator. Social Media Examiner publishes long form media. Our stuff is 2,000 words typically on average or more. So I'm here to tell you that long form is now an anomaly and it's a standout because people want quality. They're done with searching all over the place looking for just half tips. They want really rich content. So if you are a long form media creator, and by the way, I do a 90-minute show on Clubhouse every week. And I started looking at the analytics and, people are spending at least 20 minutes on average in that room. And that is the average, right? Some people are there for the whole 90 minutes. Some are in and out. But, outside of podcasting, right, where my average session duration is like 30 minutes out of a 45-minute show, if people are willing to spend that much time with your content, Joe, wouldn't you agree that is a massive value proposition in this era right now? Time is the asset. Don't you agree? If you can get their time, it's everything.
It's Evan. Thank you for the question. It's so funny because I tell this story a lot, and it's indicative of what we're talking about. Before Robert Rose and I launched our podcast, which is generally an hour and 10 minutes long, I would get people coming up to me and say, Joe, I liked your last book, or, Joe, your newsletter's great, or your blog, or whatever. As soon as I launched that podcast, that long form, intimate style of communication, that's all I ever hear. It's always about the podcast. Everywhere I go is, love the podcast, love the podcast. And the other thing I would say is, and you know this, Michael, from YouTube, whenever I do a speech and I talk about the engagement on a YouTube video, they always talk about how it has to be snackable, which I hate that word, by the way, snackable content. And then when I tell them and I give them the stats from the most popular YouTubers that they're generally 15 to 20 minutes average or longer. The YouTubers that are doing so, and then if you talk about the Twitch streamers, you're getting into such long content, and I think people don't realize. Even Mike, you said at the start, people, are engaging a little bit less here and there. I don't know if that's true. I think that you're right. Quality content wins out, and I think that if you just keep distributing consistently over time, they will stay with you as long as they possibly can. So
and let's be honest, if we take from the consumer world, Justice League was a 4-hour movie, which is amazing. I don't know if you watched it or not.
And people sat through it even, which is even more incredible.
And Netflix does, who wants to watch a little 2-hour movie now, right? I mean, it's all changed. People want experiences. They want deep, rich experiences, which is why I think, long form is becoming back. It's two sides of it. You've got short form like TikTok, which is taken off, and you've got long form like, rich video and audio. And I think if you play on either side of the equation, you can win.
The one final thing I'll say, Evan, I don't know if you have a follow-up to this, but you mentioned, Michael, the the idea of email and email getting longer. What we're seeing with email is significantly longer emails, generally 1,500, 1,700, sometimes more than 2,000 words. And what we're really seeing is it's unique content. It's a unique content experience. And I think that's what we have to think of our email like, where you just can't, I don't think you can make it anymore with link and abstract, where you're repurposing things. I mean, you could probably get there a little bit, but man, I think that you're seeing this trend, and the Morning Brews and the Hustles has sort of found that, and we're trying to copy that as well at the Tilt. And I think that that's kind of where we're going. And as long as you can build that trust over time, people will spend time if they're getting value.
I want to add a little bit to what you just said. We are doing something different at Social Media Examiner with our email. It's very short form. I think in email, there's two different objectives. There's opens and there's clicks. If you want opens, then you do what Joe is doing with the Tilt and you do what the Hustle is doing, because it's more about the read and less about the click. But if you want clicks, you need to look at what we're doing at Social Media Examiner. Our email opens with a quote of the day that's designed for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, different quotes for different kind of dispositions, right? Motivational quotes on Monday to get people inspired to start the work. Another quote on Wednesday saying, hey, you're almost there. And then a congratulatory, like, look what you've accomplished this week. Then what we do is we have very short, pithy promotions, like almost Twitter length promotions to our content, and super creative, like, hey, you know, like our traditional thing was we just take our headline and our opening, but we've completely moved away from that. And then at the bottom of the newsletter, we have a couple of just little snippets on the news of the week in our industry. And you could literally see almost the entire thing on your phone with maybe just one little scroll. Now, it's because our objective is to get a click, because we want to drive them to our media that lives on all these different media platforms. So you have to know what your objective is. In Joe's case, it's probably an open. In my case, it's absolutely clicks, because we see email as a distribution medium to promote our various forms of content. And then we want to get them over to all those various destinations so that they can consume them in their native form. That's just our strategy right now, and it seems to be working for us.
Great. Well, thanks so much. You keep reading headlines how, organic is dead and long form is dead, but it's great to hear the counter narrative, which I tend to believe. Thanks.
Thanks for asking, Evan.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. And I'm really glad to know that the goldfish attention stat is a misnomer from that we can pay attention to long form content. So Hank, you are up next, but before you ask your question, if anyone else has a question, just click the raise your hand button and we will get you in the queue. Go ahead, Hank.
Thank you, Anne. And Joe, Michael, thank you so much. My wife and I are small business coaches, and I wish every one of our clients could hear this today, because we've preached long form. Our average blog is 1,500 words. So, Michael, you are making me feel so good for the time that we invest in front of a keyboard. We were doing a podcast. It was about an hour long, and during COVID, we stopped and we switched it to doing a video where we were just interviewing, business owners. My question really is, how long should those videos be? And I'm guessing when we come in at the 15-minute mark or 10-minute, we're doing pretty well. But would we be better off going back to our own podcast with our own content in it?
Hank, do you publish those on YouTube?
Yes, we do, sir. And
do you happen to know how long? Do you look at the analytics? Like, what's the average view duration? If you don't know off the top of your head, you should look.
I don't off the top of my head.
You absolutely want to look, because this is really important. When you go into your YouTube analytics, you want to look at how long people are sticking around and watching the video. It's really hard for people to watch talking head videos. So what we used to do was we used to have this. I host this thing called the Social Media Marketing Talk Show, which has been going on for more than 5 years. I started it, then I passed it on to some other staff, and then I took it back. And when I took it back, I shortened it to 20 minutes and tried to keep it pithy and to the point. And what I also did was I published that across YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And I noticed that once I shortened it, all of a sudden a lot more people were watching the video. In addition, I strip the audio out of that and I publish it on a podcast. So we have many, many thousands that listen to that podcast every week, and they spend a lot more time listening to it in podcast form than most people do watching it. Now, the advantage to this particular thing is that if you do the video well, then there is a chance on YouTube that it could get legs and it could be watched many, many thousands of times. Like I've had some of those 20-minute interviews be watched like 7,500 times on YouTube, which is definitely more than typically listen to the podcast. But you've got to get into your analytics and you've got to look at how long they're actually watching. It's going to shock you. It's probably not as much as you think. So then you just have to ask yourself, all right, well, could this content be just as good if it was in the audio form? And if it could, you've got an opportunity to spin it out into a podcast, strip the audio out of it, and all of a sudden you've got a podcast.
Makes a lot of sense. The question comes back to, do we make it our own content? We're lucky because my wife is pithy, so that helps a lot. And it isn't just one talking head. We're fortunate in that there are two of us, and we always show up right wherever we're speaking. The question is, do we go with interviews of small business owners who do our own content and go back to what our podcast was, which was really mostly us discussing a different topic each week?
Why did you stop the podcast?
Because we had done 243 episodes, and it was it gets to be a bit of a grind. Once a week we have to do it, and then COVID hit, and we had 30 different small business clients that we had to instantly pivot their marketing for them. So we got kind of busy, and
I think that interviews are easier to do, and you know it, right? Like that's probably why you're doing interviews right now. I would go back to that podcast and I would just start publishing the interviews on the very same feed of that existing podcast and just see what happens. Go into Apple Analytics and start to look to see whether or not you've still got old subscribers that are that are listening. I would just start there. The good news about a podcast is you can bring it back to life. Joe Polizzi knows firsthand, right? Because Joe, how long was your podcast offline for?
Yeah, we were done about 18, 20 months.
Yeah.
We restarted the whole thing. Yeah.
But you didn't really restart it. You just came out with new episodes all of a sudden, right?
We just said it was almost like, the tough thing, to be honest, Mike, a lot of people still don't know that we are on. So it still takes a while to get some of those old subscribers. But to your point, we started up and we got attention right away because people saw it in their feed and they were still subscribed to it.
Now, Hank, the advantage to actually not just you and your wife talking is you don't have to prep as much. There's always a story with your guests, right? And people love hearing stories. And if you actually really enjoy interviewing people more, you don't both have to do it. You can choose, maybe one week it's Hank and the next week it's your wife. So I would strongly consider maybe continuing with what you're doing with the streaming of it and then just putting it out in podcast form and just watch and see what happens. Eventually you can program the people that watch the stream. Hey, if you can't catch our stream next week, don't worry, subscribe to our podcast or now it's follow our podcast. Hopefully that helps.
Hey, Michael, I want to thank you. It's nice to know, to get confirmation of some of the things that we're doing are right. And it's really helpful to get sent in another direction. So I appreciate you more than you know.
All right, Hank, well, follow up with me and let me know how it works. You can DM me or tweet me. Thanks for your questions.
I will absolutely do that. Thank you, sir.
That's great. And by the way, if you're going to get all dressed up in these days to do live streaming, you might as well get more out of it from that. That's supposed to be the fun of podcasting, right? And rooms like Clubhouse. So next up, if anyone still has a question, feel free to raise your hand. But we will go with, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right, for Bez.
That's right. That's correct. Thank you, Joe, Laura, and Ann, for the opportunity. And Michael, I have a question for you. I've been listening, and you seem to have an affinity towards voice and podcasting. You've gone back to that a few times. What do you think about the future of audio drop-in apps like Clubhouse? And it seems like everybody and their mother is trying to get one. And why has it been or been sticky? Because there's been some iterations from before, but now all of a sudden, Clubhouse, seems to be successful, and there's a few others. And where do you see it going in the future?
First of all, you've got a great voice. Are you a podcaster?
No, I thought I actually needed some water, but thank you.
Well, your audio is amazing. I'm here to tell you social audio is here to stay. It's going to get a little harder to, draw an audience live because the algorithms on all these platforms are changing. But this medium is not going to go away. Every single platform is working on solutions. Reddit, Facebook, it's got their hotline, which I'm a beta tester on. I haven't done it. Twitter just rolled out literally yesterday, Twitter Spaces to anyone with more than 600 people. They're all a little different, but they're all fundamentally the same, which is you can bring people up and you can have a group dialogue like we're having right now. I am very excited about this kind of content because you can do what we're doing right now. You can create original content. You can mute people as they come up on the stage, like I just did. And you can do all sorts of amazing things, and if what's great about this kind of content is it doesn't require as much prep work as like what Hank was talking about earlier with his wife, right? You just come up with a couple of questions and then you bring people up live. It's a small, intimate, rich experience. I know that I've got a couple of videos that I've done on Clubhouse, but I've been very bullish on this platform because it's transformed so many small businesses because you don't need a lot of people. You just need the right people, right? And it's less about the number of people. It's more about the quality of the people that are here. I can tell that the people that are here right now live are really present and have real desires, right? And if I was in the business of selling my time or services, which I'm not, this would be very easy for me to grow my small business. I think it's absolutely going to blow up and be a huge opportunity. I mean, this platform has just announced they're going to be doing some stuff with the NFL. Well, they did something with the NFL drafts. There's just so many big opportunities that are coming in the world of social audio. Clubhouse is the only platform that I'm aware of that is solely dedicated to this. All the other platforms, it's a bolt-on feature. And I think if you're strategic about this, especially if you are a content creator and you create content on a platform and then you want to have a post-show experience over here, it's really powerful. There's just no better way to connect to a live audience other than an actual physical event. And that's what's great about this room right now is we have a small little group of people that are present here and spending a lot of time with us. And you really can't get that anywhere else. So I would experiment with it big time if I were you, Bez.
No, thank you. And I'm from the HR side, and sometimes I wonder, how would your own company town hall look like if it were like the Clubhouse town hall? And I think it would be amazing.
Absolutely. Well, and TikTok just announced that they're going to be doing 3 live experiences here on TikTok on Clubhouse. So they're the first major platform that is actually formally using this platform to do something kind of exciting. But yeah, and you can create your own clubs just for your customers. I mean, there's so many opportunities with this kind of platform. I can't wait to see what it becomes.
Thank you.
Great question, Baz. So last up for our questions is Christy. Christy?
Great. Thank you so much. I'm a longtime admirer, and I have to say that 3 weeks after your conference, Michael, in spring of 2020, we had a conference at the Seattle Convention Center, or at least a planned conference, and unfortunately we did have to cancel just a couple weeks prior to that. So we were definitely keeping an eye on your conference and what you were doing, and it just had an enormous impact on our company. And with that, we have a very small company. We've had to be very content focused over the past year, and our favorite word over the past year has been pivot. And in being a content focused company, my question for you is, as the creator of a company that's very content driven, and that you are the face of your company, you launched the company, you've been on camera and deeply immersed in all of the creative. I'm really curious, at what point do you extract yourself from the content side? And I'm asking, for myself, at what point is it okay to let others manage the content calendar, or is that something that you would never give up in some small way?
It's a wonderful question. It's taken me years to get to the point where I've got a decent sized staff around me. But, one of the first things I took off my calendar was the talk show, the live show. I got 2 different people to run that show. But after COVID happened, I took it back because I needed to get back into the mix. Clubhouse created a new show for me that really is just fun, for lack of better words. I'm an extrovert. I absolutely love talking to people. So that created a new opportunity. But the hardest thing is to really just let some things go, right? Like, for example, I am a writer. I am the chief copywriter. I am actually in the process of hiring a copywriter, so I don't have to do that anymore. So I can focus on strategy and new product development. And it's not easy, but I've been doing this for a while. Christy, you probably have been doing this for a little while. You just have to start in small steps. You just have to start to take some of the things that you're really good at and be okay with the fact that maybe someone else can't quite do it as well as you do, but that's fine. Because I look at every hour that I invest as a limited resource. And if I spend too much of it being the voice or face of the company, like you don't see, I'm not active on social. So that's part I completely delegated. I'm not even active on our YouTube channel. Like, it's all other people now. So that has been a process, but it's just not easy. And Joe probably can answer better than I can how to do it, because Joe was even more of the face of his brand. But I would just say it's a small strategic process where you have to take the things that don't bring you joy and stop doing them, or get someone else to do them. And then slowly but surely, you'll begin to understand what your strengths are. And if your strengths are not creating content, then don't do it. But there are some people who have magical powers when it comes to content creation, and it would not be smart to not have them. That's my thoughts, at least. So if that's your gift and you love it, and it's your zone of genius, then I would say get everything else off your plate so you can just do that.
Just a quick follow-up, Christy. Do what Mike said. Make the list. The things you love to do, keep doing. The things that you don't love to do and you're not good at, start outsourcing them, and your life will be 1,000 times better.
Oh, thank you so much for that advice. And the irony is that we just had our staff do that very same exercise. And so I need to take some of the medicine and do it myself. Thank you so much for that advice.
My pleasure.
It's nice to know you're on the same page, right, Christy? From that, that's always great. Well, Robert, we will give you the floor.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Mike and Joe. I've appreciated all the great content you've put out over the years. And I'm still listening. It seems to me, Mike, you have put out a very large amount of high quality, good content. So does Joe. And you give a lot of it away for free. I heard you talk briefly about this a few years ago at one of the conferences, but I'd like to hear more about your philosophy about that.
Every piece of content is designed to be a magnet to draw an audience to us. So what we need to do is we need to just, experiment with creating different kinds of content. And by the way, I'm going to mute you, Robert, just so that you get a little bit of feedback. The goal is to create the content strategically to draw an audience to you, right? So if you think of content in the same way you think of an advertisement, right? That content is designed to draw an audience. And the more you begin to experiment with the video, the written word, and the audio content, the more you begin to realize you draw different audiences to you, knowing full well that a tiny little fragment of that audience will turn into a subscriber of some sort, right? And a subscriber on the YouTube channel, or subscriber on the podcast, or an email subscriber. And then a tiny segment of the subscribers will turn into customers. So it really is a strategic plan that you have to keep feeding the beast, right? Because no content, no new audience, no new audience, no new subscribers, no new subscribers, no new customers. So that's a very simplistic model, but absolutely, no matter what, we're going to keep creating amazing content, because that's the connection to everything. No content, no business. And I know we're almost out of time, so I'm radically simplifying it, Robert, but that is the essence of it.
Thank you.
Robert, thank you. I think he answered your question. Of course, it's the same with me. 99% you want to give away for free to build your subscriber database. I know we're up on time. I have some closing thoughts and comments, but Mike, thank you so much for your wealth of information. It's just outstanding. Anywhere special you want to send people for more information about you?
Sure. Just go to Social Media Examiner, and you can find all the different shows that we do. If you're listening to this after it was live. If you're listening to it live, you can follow me here on Clubhouse. Got lots of great content that we are constantly producing.
Okay, it's just Joe again. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Michael Stelzner. So many great nuggets in there, right? But a couple that really made an impact on me was the idea of long-form content. More companies are focusing on short, bite-sized pieces of content when Mike and I think the real opportunity is consistently delivering longer pieces of content. And of course, the power of email, right? Social Media Examiner is everywhere on the web and social media, but the glue that holds SME's business model together is their email subscriber database. If social media platforms shut down all their access tomorrow, SME would be just fine, right? And thanks again to Michael Stelzner for this wonderful interview. And then join us next Thursday on the Content Inc. podcast for another very special interview and case study from the Content Inc. book. But don't worry, we're still doing our Monday 5-minute motivational podcasts. Have a good one, and good luck to you.